ladies. Welcome to another podcast of Enjoying Your Children. And again, I've got my guests with me, Erin and Adina. And today we are going to tackle the topic of bullying. And me being the youngest of 5 children,
Oh,
you would think that I would know something about it. And although my brothers and sisters, I won't use the word bully. They can I say they experimented on me like I was a little,
mhm.
experiment to see what will happen if we do this and what will happen if we do this.
Oh my
So
gosh, can I relate?
you know,
Remember, I'm 6 out of 7, so I was down in there.
so it wasn't really considered bullying for me.
No.
It is so I don't really have much experience with this, even with my children, except for maybe the circumstances that they're in the other house, right? Which I'm not part of, so I
See?
don't know
Yeah.
much about.
Mm,
But
mm.
definitely, this is an important topic for us. So I'm going to give to you, Erin. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you. Adina, did you want to say anything? Were you bullied or no?
No, not
No,
at
not
all.
as child. Okay.
No.
Anyway, and let's just hope none of us confess to being the bully. But I actually have a testimony, and I did participate in being a bully, which I didn't even realize, but it gave an opportunity to, yeah, well, anyway, I'll just leave
Yeah.
it at that. But I just thought in today's world, you hear about it so much, and I especially want to plug or encourage mothers, parents who have children who are being bullied at school. It's nothing to play around with these days. It has become
No.
so dangerous and so rampant, and just these young children thinking they can't even continue on with their life, and even being pushed to say, just, you shouldn't live,
Yeah.
kill yourself, all these kinds of things online. It's a very scary thing, to have. So we need to be very serious about it. It's definitely something that I wouldn't follow anyone's advice. I mean, if you don't have a relationship, with your heavenly husband, best friend, with the Lord, God the Father, whoever it is, this is the time, because it could mean life or death for your children, because
Mm.
it's become so serious. So I thought we should do it. But if the bullying is happening at school, I just cannot understand why any parent wouldn't start homeschooling, pull their child out of school and out of that environment. Because think about the hopelessness that a child feels, where, hey, you just have to go and deal with it themselves. Because all of us as adults, if we're in a work situation and there was somebody who was really cruel to us and we couldn't even face going, and it was so trauma, we'd quit. We would quit.
Yes.
The only adults who can't just leave those kinds of are prisons. And that's exactly where your child, and feeling that hopelessness, that's what leads to them, ending their life
Yes.
or starting to whatever. But definitely that's when take that child out of that, environment. And sometimes it's just the oddity of the child. Anytime children are fearful, evil, just the nature of evil, preys on fear. So if they're
Yes.
fearful, they're attracting that sort of bullying. And back in the old days, or if you look at old movies, and I know it was true, is that those who weren't afraid, or it was usually the boys who would bully,
Yes. Yes.
that they would say, just go up and punch the bully, you know,
Yes.
the first time, and you might get beat up, but that's the end of it, or something like that. Or some people said, oh, I became like a comic, and I would laugh about it. Well, that's
Yes.
almost biblical, laugh it off and just say, hey, there's nothing you can do to my body, yes, but not to my soul, or something. I don't
Yes.
know. It's just something that children need to know. They have a heavenly Father and a best friend to help navigate these kinds of things. So that's the
Yes.
first thing, that I think, laying a good, strong foundation. And don't listen to anybody's advice. This is serious. And again, as I said, I don't think I need to tell them, we all know how serious it is, with
Yeah.
that. So anyway,
and
go
it
ahead.
happens everywhere. Like, I just wanted Dina to share a little bit because I know that she has some experience with her daughter.
There.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I thought I read that.
Yes,
Was it at school then?
yes, I personally didn't have any bullying myself when I was growing up. I don't know, it was different. But when my daughter, after we moved to another town, she went to another school, there was a girl that bullied her, but more just not physically. It wasn't a physical thing. It was like, commenting on the way she looks, about, and always, I don't know how to describe it, but it's more emotional bullying.
Emotional.
Well, that is so dangerous because of the
Yeah.
reaction, what they're going to have from it, That's the problem with it. Yeah.
Yes.
The
But then,
self-harm after that emotional, and
Yes.
that's what hurts us as women more. Do you know?
yes,
Not that it doesn't affect the men or guys, but they are created differently. And they could have words with one another, men can, and they can shake hands and then not think about it again. But we can't get it out
Yes.
of our heads.
Definitely.
It is our nature. That is the way we were created. And it's not a bad thing. It's just something we need to know about ourselves, and know about, so for our daughters, for our granddaughters, whatever, or friends, and know that we're made differently. Yeah. So go ahead. You were saying about.
yeah, so once, well, it kept on going and it kept on going. And then the one day the girl pushed her. It was the only time that something physical happened. And I don't think that was the intent, but she pushed my daughter from behind. And she fell with her knees on like the paving. And okay, that's when I was still married at that stage. My former husband stepped in and he went to the office. But it did stop afterwards. But I told her what I taught my daughter in that period of time, because I already found RMI, but wasn't divorced yet. So I knew some of the principles that we learn in course 1, 2, and 3. So I taught her to just, treat this girl, doesn't matter what she does or say, just treat her with kindness. And you don't know what her situation like at home and what's happening in her life. So that's causing her to maybe act out against my daughter. And eventually, she did apply all those stuff I taught her to do. And then eventually they became best friends.
Yeah, I mean, they're just as a thing. And when we were just talking before the podcast started about the living lesson that I'm working on about an understanding way, and that specifically about women, and talks about wives, but actually the word that's translated is not wives, it's just women, which is interesting if you go back to the Greek. Anyway, but it is being understanding, and you're absolutely right. Where does that anger come from? It's rooted in something, and nobody being kind and things. But it does take, that's hard to do. But the fact that your daughter did that, and what a testimony that is, huge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Huge
Yeah,
testimony.
that's a wonderful testimony.
Young girls will be able to do that. Not a lot of young girls.
No.
It's definitely, you could see that also Heavenly Father that guided her in.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
later,
amazing. And isn't it interesting that the father didn't step in until there was a physical altercation. But really,
Yes.
you know, there's that
Yes.
old saying, sticks and stones may break my, but words will never hurt me. That's so not true,
Yeah.
because
No, it's not true.
words can be very detrimental, whether it's the parents,
Yes.
whether it's just one person planting that seed. It could be damaging all their life if they believe that lie. That's the big thing, is, you know,
Yes.
again, we go back to having that relationship and say, what do you think about me? You know, what do you see in me? And because hearing it, and it may not be like even a thought, or it could just be a feeling and a different, you know, how God will take care of that. So that's another. You were saying something? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yes, in that period of time, I also gave her that verse, I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I gave her that whole passage. And I told her that this is how the Lord sees you. No matter what anyone at school says about you, or if they comment about your arms that are too thin, or whatever they are commenting on, this is what your Heavenly Father thinks of you, because this is how He created you. And she wrote that verse everywhere.
Oh, she wrote it down?
Yes.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yes, so she really grabbed hold of that verse. And then when the children went to the private school, it turned around and it was the boys that bullied her and always made comments about the way she looks. You know, and I know it broke her confidence so much, because I think when it's a goal, you kind of, can handle it. And they became friends afterwards. But in this situation, it was the boys in class that started to make comments in front of everyone. And I think,
isn't it interesting that the unique and wonderfully made, which is why this is important, and something, I mean, it's almost like you need to start talking about this in a preventative way, to say how unique you are, and that makes it special and one of a kind. Like when there are certain things, like a picture, that's a word, one of a kind, it becomes, or an endangered species, you know, there's only one left. It has a higher value, not a lesser value of it. And so thinking that way instead, because but I think it's so odd that from the beginning, even with our doctors, you know, I was just talking to someone, we were talking about, I think probably because I have twins and they're getting so chunky, you know, breastfed babies that are chunky. But I was talking about how when my oldest son was a baby, he was huge, you know, he was such a big baby. I know only, but before we went in, all of us mothers were waiting out with our babies talking, you know, and and we were talking about something, but what I found out, and I called the doctor on it, is that I came in and he said, oh, you need to start supplementing because your baby's so big and he won't be getting enough. I said, won't be getting enough? He's so big and he's so big and fat. I mean, obviously he's getting plenty or he wouldn't be that size. And then on top of it, I said, but I said, you just told that baby that was born premature, that's not gaining weight, the same thing. How could it be? And it's like, does everybody have to be just this? Why is it that if they're, and then like when children are growing, there are times when I had mine and they were so thin, it's like, oh, this is scary, you know, they look so thin. And that same child later on can go through a period, you know, near puberty or just before, and they're just real chunky. But the fact that everybody tries to get them to be just this, all the same, what is that? It doesn't make any sense. Everybody has different genetics. The parents are big, they're small, they're tiny, they, you know, all of these things. It's just, but we have to acknowledge it ourselves and then be able to share that with our children, grandchildren, friends, everybody, to just be, you know, there's one saying that people misuse it. And so people don't use it, but you be you. It's like the initials,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
just be who God created you to be, and be content too about the way that God made you. And if he wants you different, talk to him about it and let him
Yes.
be the one to do it. But there's going to be benefits to the way he created you, or he wouldn't have created you that way. Even handicaps, even deformities or whatever, do you know? Even those,
Yes.
God
Yes.
has it for it. Or I have some grandchildren that have some health issues, but God created them that way. And I said, you know, what makes you so special is you have such compassion and
Yes.
caring and a tenderness that most girls your age do not have. And it's all because of this that you went through. And that is that's what makes you so shining and so sweet. That's it. And the other
Yes.
girls don't have that. And then she started seeing it wasn't because God is punishing her, or, do you know, she
Yes.
saw. And you have to, but I'm not just making it up. It's true. That's exactly what makes her different, you know? So, and now you can help these others, because there are so many now that have these kind of health issues or these food allergies or whatever it is that they're going through. So I think that is, but it all comes back down to this bullying and things, you know, but body image and things is very difficult, you know. That's a whole other topic we probably will have to address, right? Because it
Yes.
is. Body image and things is a big thing. And it starts with us as mothers and grandmothers, because, you know, it's really something I'm very conscious of. I can't think I want my daughters to, or my granddaughters to feel this way if I'm self-conscious. And if do you know, as whether it's
Yes.
because I'm getting older or heavier or whatever it is, or wrinkles or I can't be that way and expect, then I expect more from my children or grandchildren than I can live. So we have to live it first and know how to navigate it. And then we can share it with those now. And I think it's just because of the internet, because it's just, it's so much more prevalent than it's ever been in history. And that's why we have to, you know,
Yes.
we
Yeah,
have to
because there's
tackle
this
this.
certain image that you need to adhere
Yes.
to. And if you,
Yes.
and even in school, right? Even I'm just thinking of my son now, even in school, you need to be able to do this and this and this and this and this in order to pass this grade, right?
Yes.
And it's like putting them in a box where
Exactly.
they, if they don't do this, it means that they're not, can I say the word normal, or they're not,
Yes. No,
they're not
exactly. They're
part
not
of the,
normal. But the thing is,
exactly.
we don't want them normal. They
No,
need to be unique. Each of
yes.
our fingerprints is unique. Our DNA is
Yes.
unique. So we see that, and that's God's intent. But man wants to fit everybody, including God, in a box.
Exactly.
And so you
Yeah.
don't want to do that, but exactly that. And that's another thing for school. You know, you have to be able to do these things. But I remember, the one son that couldn't read until he was 11, yet I knew, they already had tested him when he was just 2 weeks old. They said he's at a genius IQ, but he's not normal. No, he isn't. He's way above normal. But if it comes to, but if you can't do this, then there's something wrong with you. And I just never wanted him to think anything is wrong with him. So I just kept him from it. But that wouldn't have been able to be possible had he been in a school environment. He would have been put with children who couldn't read for other reasons, you know, maybe their IQ was low, but his wasn't, and all of these differences. And that's why they're given to the parents in order for us who love them the most, who have all of the investment into them, will always be supporting them. They're the ones that need to make the decisions and to find out from the creator, what do you want me to do? You know, how do I handle all of it? I know we've kind of got off the bullying. Should we go to another, or should we try and get back to that?
Yes, and I want to add something there to
Mm.
that, you know. I remember when my daughter was younger, I can't remember what it was that bothered her about herself. It could have been that she wanted another hair color, or I can't even
Mm.
remember.
Mhm.
And I told her the story in one of your lessons or books
Yes.
about, do you
Yes.
remember
Yes. Yeah. The missionary.
the
And I always
missionary?
forget what her name is,
Yes,
but she was a
yes,
missionary to India, but she woke
yes,
up at 5, I think it was, and she told her mother she was praying for blue eyes because her mother had beautiful blue eyes. And then she
yes,
ran down excited. God answered my prayer. And she looked at her. She still had her brown eyes. And he said no, is what she
yes,
said. And that God's plan was for her to be a missionary, and it was very dangerous at a time in India. And of course, well, whether you know, but in India, there are no blue eyes. If she had blue
no.
eyes, she would never have been able to fit in
Mm,
and do the
mm,
work that God called her to do. So
mm.
sometimes it takes a long time to find out why, you know? I wonder
Yes.
why, but just knowing God says yes and God says no. And if it's
Mm.
no, there's a very good reason why he said no. And sometimes it's a wait, right? but
Yes.
but to be happy with that, being that brown-eyed girl. So what happened with your daughter?
Yeah, so I told her that story, but I can't even remember because it was a few years ago. And I think that's also like Adina said when she spoke to her daughter about being fearfully and wonderfully made, right? It's for a
Mm.
reason, it's for a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
We are who we are for a reason. And I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying we should excuse bad behavior and say, well, I am what I am, so you need to
No, it
accept.
has
No,
nothing to do
no,
with
no,
behavior
it has
too. Yeah.
nothing to do with that. It's just
Mm-hmm.
to do with you know, how he made us, and it,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know, and how I just want to tell a quick story. We were sitting around the table at my sister's place one day, and because I'm at my sister's, of course, I take off my shoes. It's my sister's house. And we were sitting around, and she was busy in the kitchen, and I was sitting there with her, and my brother-in-law came in, and he was sitting there with us, and he was looking down at my feet, and he said, goodness, but all of you've got such ugly toes. And I started laughing because I was like, what are you saying about my toes? And we were laughing. And just at that stage, my daughter came in. And later, when we were home, she said, didn't you feel bad when uncle said that you had ugly toes? I said, no. I mean, it's not as if my toes are beautiful, but they're my toes, so it's fine. So, and then we started joking about the toes, and we started comparing it and looking at our toes and seeing whose toes looked like what. And it was just so nice to see that something that could have been turned into a situation that would have been like me hiding them because, you know, he told
Yes, or
their
self-conscious. And also, I love
conscious.
that you not being oversensitive. That's another thing, is that the
Mm,
sensitivity. Oh, you can't say this because they'll be offended, and people could be offended at anything. And so
yes,
I think not having that where they used to say like she has a chip on her shoulder. Do you remember that? I don't
yes,
know where that
yes.
that's saying. And so it's kind of like that, but she's so oversensitive. You can't look at her, you can't say anything but these wonderful
Mm,
things. But like, because even just the way your daughter, because of the culture she's growing up in,
yes.
didn't that
Mm,
make you feel horrible? Weren't you? But it is like just laughing about, well, that is what it is. And I think that is that'll go with her for a long way, to
mm.
think about that, with it. And it wasn't to be unkind either, but sometimes people
No,
are saying it to be unkind. So how
he was,
are you going to deal with that? But I think that
yes.
there's so many messages and lessons in
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, he was actually just joking because he probably said something to my sister previously
Oh,
about
for sure.
toes or something. So it was probably an inside joke between them. And, you know, he dragged me into it. So, so I know he wasn't trying to be unkind or anything like that.
It is a funny that you have these kinds of things. So do you want us to go into the bullying, or we could
Yes,
since we
well,
did
if there's
promised it, yeah?
we did promise this, yes, yes. And because I don't really, like I said, you know, it's not really for me to have any experience. I would like to hear from you.
Yeah. And what I was
Yes.
saying, and I didn't mean, but enjoying your children, it wasn't about me being bullying. It's about our
Mm.
children being bullied, and what are
Yes,
we going to,
yes,
and how do you enjoy your children
yes.
and enjoy being a parent. And also there's another message in here of opportunities when you do mess up, because I messed up in this. And it was really amazing. And it's something that was commented on more than the initial, thing. But
Yes.
what I wanted to share is that there is, which I didn't even realize was a bullying. So we were all several families now. How many? I don't know. There several families, and some were extended and extended, like they're not really related to me, but they're related to some. Anyway, had this group. We were at Disney. We were at one of the parks, and one of my granddaughters didn't want to ride a ride, and
Yes.
but everybody was kind of, come on, through the whole thing, getting her in line, come on, pushing her, and I realized it was kind of and not until after, it was kind of a bullying kind of thing, but I was part of it. Come on. But at the same token, I don't like to ride certain rides. Do you know? I don't like, definitely don't like drop ones. I'm at the age where, that's okay. I don't really want to do like roller coaster kind of things. I'm more in the, it's a small world, little singing, little boat, not even, no waterfalls even, that's my speed. So I'm very happy with those. But if I say I don't really want to go on it, it's nice to respect one another, and even respect children. Now, I understand that sometimes they need encouraging, like, oh, I think you'll do really well, But I think it's important that they establish that and to maybe even pray about it. I don't know. But they have to determine what they want to do. So not only did she ended up going on, okay? She hated it. And afterwards, she wouldn't talk to anybody, including me, because I was part of the whole thing, And then a little bit later, to help her to kind of come out of it, this is another whole thing. We'll buy her this, it's a special kind of ice cream with this fruit and stuff. And then she kind of came out of it. And I thought, so I was talking to my one daughter-in-law who were good friends. And I said, I just felt really like I was participating in, that wasn't the right thing. She needs to decide for herself. And we need to respect that, because think about the fact if she's at school or in a neighborhood or at a party and they kind of push her to do something and everybody kind of gangs in and she doesn't know to say, I'm not going to do this, because it could be pushing them into, this was a fun kind of thing, event in a way, do you know?
Yes.
But you have to think of that same scenario in others. And what are we training our children, and we're training them to say that. It's kind of like when I have a big thing about asking a child, did you do this? Like they did something, when they're like, did you do this? And I always tell parents, don't ask them if did they do it so that you teach them to lie. No, I didn't. That's what they're going to do.
Yes, of course.
I would just say, and also I didn't do, why did you do this? Do you know why I didn't do that? Because then they would make up an excuse,
Yes.
like, well, I had to do it because, that sort of thing. Instead, I say, you should not do that. That's not the right thing to do. I didn't ask them if they did. I knew they did it. And then I'm not going to say, why did you do it? Because I don't really care why you did it. Just don't do that again,
Yeah.
But it's how are you going to train them? Or those that lie and then they get away with the lie, you train them to lie.
Yes.
So this same kind of thing, if being respectful of one another, because we want people to be respectful of us and our decisions. And that's another reason that also helps with daughters who play games. Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you know? Playing games like, oh, no, I don't want this. And then they keep caught. And then finally, okay. Do you know? They love that sort of thing. I remember when I was
I get
married.
what you say.
Okay, I'll tell you when. So when I was married, my husband at the time, he'd say, do you want to stop and get an ice cream here? And I said, no. Are you sure you don't want to get an ice cream here? And I'm not a game player. If I say no, I don't. And if I want it, I'll say yes. I'm not the typical, female in that way. But he was used to having to do it. And he keeps asking. I said, no, I really don't. And then we're passing the exit. If you want, and I think, what in the what? I said, what? Well, now it's too late. And I said, can we just try this? If I want, I'll say yes. And if I say no, and if I miss it, well, it's on me, isn't it? But I think it's better than keep asking about something,
Yes.
just like let your, and the Bible says that let your yes be yes, yes, or no, no. Anything more of this comes to evil. There you go. So not that I quoted that. I mean, at least I knew that not to do that. But anyway, but I think, and then respecting each other's decisions on it. And if they missed out on it, it's something else. Now, it is difficult for parents. Like I had some that they wouldn't ride the roller coaster back when, and you need to do it, or, you're afraid of the water. I don't know. And I don't know that I want to tackle that right now, but let's just tackle this one part. We don't want to be part of the bullying. So here's what happened after I realized what I had done, and even paying off someone. That's when I was very convicted. So I wanted to, not the one who started the whole thing. That was another family member. I didn't feel, because I didn't want them to think I was judging them. Do you know? Anyway, I felt better about going and confessing my faults to someone. So I told my daughter, I said, I feel very badly. And she was, well, I was part of it. I said, no, you weren't. You really weren't. I didn't see you involved. So let me just tell you, I was doing this. I was party to it. I should know better. And it wasn't right. And on top of it, when it got to the place where we're buying her off, what could that mean for a girl with? And she goes, oh my gosh. And I said, exactly. What if this boy wanted, I'll do this and I'll buy you this. That's what's going on. I'll buy you this if you do this, which I know is not right. So girls, all of us have to have our convictions and have real convictions. I mean, some things are preferences. I'd rather not ride on it, that sort of thing. But we have to have that. And then we have to respect one another. And then we have to ourselves and teach others that then you walk away from the situation. I can't be, and just walk out on that because you don't want to be part of it. But I was able to go to my granddaughter and say, I wanted to tell you, I am so sorry. I should not have done that. I didn't bring in anybody else, but I said about me. I didn't say about being bought off or anything like that. And I said, I was so wrong in that. And I want you. And she was, oh, no, Mimi, it's okay. And I said, no, it isn't okay. And I should know better. And I didn't see it. And I want you to know that when you have a conviction like that and you don't want to do something, don't let anyone sway you. And I want to help you to do that because I failed in this. And it brought us closer. And then my daughter-in-law who was watching, she said, the fact that you were willing to go and say that you were wrong and to confess that, she said, I don't remember anybody in authority ever doing that, And she said, that's huge. So even though I messed up horribly in this, and I had to humble myself, to do this. And then the double blessing came from us getting so much closer, everybody I was involved with. Now, the other people, the other parties, I'm just giving it to God, I'm not everybody's, spiritual leader here. Let me go in and get that's not my job to do that. I can just let it go. But I was able to do that, And so I thought I just needed to share that because I think that it's huge. And then also I'll stop on that, but I also have something else because just as I was preparing for that, I think it was 2 weeks ago, we were going to have this topic and then we switched. But I ended up seeing a YouTube video about a father and how he dealt with a boy his son who
Hmm.
was bullying. I do want to share that with you, but
Oh,
go ahead and
yeah.
if you have any comment on this other or thoughts that you had when I was talking, I wanted to be quiet and give you each chance to.
Yeah, I really liked what you said there, and I want to get to you as well, Adina, but I just want to share something because there was this one day you reminded me of when I took my children ice skating for the first time, and my son didn't want to go on the ice. And I knew it was just because he was afraid and he didn't want everyone to see, but I knew that I couldn't push him into this because it's just gonna, it's just gonna make it worse if I push him to do this. But I knew that if he was gonna do it, he would enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
But I
Yes,
left
this is
that day.
exactly that. What do you do
Yes,
in that? Exactly. I love that.
exactly.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Yes.
but that day I left it. I didn't push him. I just left it. I thought this may be a conversation that the two of us can have when we're alone, not in front of anyone, not
Mm-hmm.
embarrassing him or anything like that. But then that evening was when he had the crisis with his appendix.
Oh,
So I was just thinking that if I bullied him that day,
oh,
in
wow.
what would have happened, I just thought of what could have
Could
happened.
have ruptured because wasn't it close to rupturing?
Yeah, it was actually already a piece of it was starting to rupture. So
Oh gosh.
what would have happened if I
Mm,
so that but that I mean that wasn't me, that was him, of course, that I
mm.
didn't want to make a scene in front of everyone. And the next time he went, we already spoke about it, and I said, just try it, that's all I'm asking is just try it, and if you don't like it, you can come off the ice and we'll never talk about it again. And we spoke a little bit about trying new things and how to handle new things because of the way he doesn't like new things, right? You know him, he's set in his ways, he likes his routine. He would eat the same thing for like breakfast every day. He'd eat the same thing for lunch every day, and he wouldn't mind. And so just getting him out of that comfort zone. And when he started ice skating, when he decided to do that, he enjoyed it so much. But maybe if I bullied him, I don't know what the
Yeah,
consequence that
yeah,
would be. But
yeah,
I did bully my children the once to take off their masks after we were allowed to take off
yeah,
our masks in COVID, and they refused.
yeah.
And
And
I
I don't
really,
know if a parent
no,
in bullying, like my
yes,
thing, my thing was, it was part of like almost a mob
I get it.
mentality. Do you know?
Yes, yes,
Like I
yes, yes.
didn't even say, oh, you should really do it. Or as the
Mm,
parent, I think you need to at least try. I love what you
I
said
get
because
it.
that is really true. You need to
Mm,
try this or try this food or
mm,
whatever. And if you don't
yes,
like it, you don't have to do it again
yes.
because I think that you would like it, that sort of
Mm.
thing is different. But I don't think a parent necessarily, do you think? I don't know. I mean, because
Yeah,
I use mine as my being the grandmother, but it was more
yes.
like I said, there was like a bullying
Mob,
atmosphere,
I
that
get
mob mentality. It's like what happens on the internet. One person says it and they can hide behind this and then they're all getting in on it. They start to,
it.
they see that. And I don't know what causes that, but it is. And a lot of times it's the sinfulness too, how like we know in the Bible, when they're all worshiping this calf and they're all coming in to do it, or they're one's grumbling, they all start grumbling, because there's this
Yes.
like a mob
Mob,
kind of
yes. Yeah.
mentality there that is a dangerous thing, which is why we are set apart.
Yes.
We're like an eagle versus some other flock of something. That's why
Yeah.
we are set apart. Even though we're amongst them, we're not part of them. He
Yeah.
tells us that. So no.
Sure. Yes, that's really true. Adina, what do you have? Do you have anything to share with us?
Yeah, for me, with my son as well, what I asked my heavenly husband, the Lord,
Mhm.
about was that my son can also sometimes not want to do stuff. And in the beginning, it did bother me, but I learned and to not force him to, if he wants to join in, then, you know, he can join in. If he doesn't, then I leave him. And when I just leave him, you know, most of the time, eventually he joins us in whatever it is that we do, you know, so, but I don't want to force them to do anything, but so I just leave them and they can join if they want, or with the food as well, because my daughter will eat anything. My son is a bit more picky about what he eats. Also, the same things, you know, set in his way a little bit. So,
Yes.
but I do dish up new things for him and then tell him, listen, try it. Just try it. You might like it. And there was times that he did and he enjoyed the food. And there's times that he didn't. And yeah, so it's just
Yeah, and
not pushing anything or
yeah, true. And Adina is using the nice word, saying he's being picky, but here in South Africa, we would use the real word, just saying he's full of nonsense. So
Oh, that's funny. That's a funny thing. Well, you know, now you're more of the progressive parenting that's very
Yes.
popular today, because
Uh,
I parent more like I was raised, you know, back in
yes.
my time, because back in my time, you didn't have options. It wasn't hear me out. You just did it, you know, like, I mean, and I think about pivotal things, like I didn't want to go on a trip with my mother, you know, for 3 months, leaving my father and stuff like that. And if I had a say, I wouldn't have gone, but I didn't have a say. They didn't ask me. They didn't say, well, what do you want to do? Or more specifically, like with swimming, you know, I even said, please, please don't make me go in there, you know, to my mother, because she wanted me to go and swim at this school where she used to teach swimming. And I just didn't want, I had a fear, which is probably a lot of what everybody that holds us back, right? We have something that triggers that, or there's a fear of the unknown, just that natural, even if nothing happened. But there were swim lessons back when I was a 3-year-old, I think is what it was, but they had young instructors, and one, they said, put your face in and blow bubbles. So I was putting my face in, and it's in the bay, which is dark. Do you know? It's dark and a little scary and cold. But I had my face down, and the one pushed my head. No, put your head down, and she pushed my head in. Do you know?
No.
And so just from that, I went and I refused to have any kind of instruction. So here I'm 9 now, and my mother's saying, oh, you need to have this instruction because I didn't know you were so good at swimming. She saw me swimming. Everybody was saying, oh my gosh, do you know how good she swims? She's better than it. And so my mother took time to come and look at us, you know, look at me swimming. And she said, oh, no. And then I thought, oh no, what have I done? So she said, she kind of tricked me. She drove over, you know, and pulled up and said, your swimsuit's under, you know, your swim bag's underneath the seat. Go in and get it on and swim. And I said, please don't make me do this. No. And she says, go on. And I did, because I knew to obey. It wasn't like where mothers are pulling their kids out of the car. I mean, some are that fearful, you know, I mean, they are terrified. So it's a little different. But anyway, so I swam in it, which led to so many, please, I don't want to do, no, don't go any farther with this, you know. And then it's the coach that was terrifying me, you know, and she's the Olympic chairman, and I'm like, oh my gosh. But each thing that I did, you know, if I had had the opportunity, I wouldn't do it. And learning to do that about authority, and even every day that I would swim, I didn't want to be doing it, but I didn't think about it. It wasn't up to me. It was the authority over me. But learning that and doing what didn't come naturally, what I didn't want to do, but not thinking about, I don't want to be doing this, you know, that just makes it harder. It's like dry, you know, pedaling, but keep the brakes on. Makes it really hard. Just take the brakes off and just pedal. But because of that, I mean, I've seen all over the world. I've been 22 countries and living and I would never, that is so not me. And I would have missed most of my life, you know, and what God
Yes.
had for me, and these amazing memories and experiences and stories, and making me who I wanted to be. So I do understand well, I don't ask them, or like, you know, you were talking about not trying different foods. My one son, who's now the father of this big family, even twins and stuff. The interesting thing is that he would not, he was terrified. He was, well, I think I talked about it once before. I'm not afraid of my food. And he kept taking bites.
Yes.
I'm not afraid of my
Yes.
food. He loves experimenting and trying different things. And he I don't want to say pride, you know, but he prides himself
Yes.
in, you know, it's one of his things now that he
Yes.
does. But had I just said it's okay, on the other hand, my parents didn't really, because we didn't all eat together. My parents ate separately, very formal. And then we'd all be kind of like, not a trough, but you know, here's
Yes.
all your food. And so we'd all, and then there's that bullying. My older brothers would take my pork chops and give me, cut away the meat and give me just the bone to eat. And I'm not just saying that, it's actually true. And then I would just nibble on, but I was happy, and I certainly wasn't going to, you know, question my older brothers that were, you know, 14 and 18 years older than I am. I'm just like, okay, yeah, right, sure, you know, whatever, you know. I didn't say, and I certainly wouldn't tell my parents on my brothers. I mean, I wanted to live to see the next day. You didn't do that, you know. But anyway, but with the food, I didn't try things. I remember when it was time, you know, we'd eat spaghetti. I didn't even eat the sauce. I just had butter. However, there is hope, because when I started traveling, I didn't want to offend any of my hostesses or my hosts. And I ate everything.
Yeah.
I tried this craziest thing, squid, stingray, all kinds of, I
Goodness.
ate and I was the one who just wanted butter on my spaghetti, because I couldn't even, and I had like a hot dog, I wouldn't even put mustard or ketchup, and I was eating food all over the world. So you just never know, right? You just never know. There's always a different things. Before we get off the topic of the bullying, I did want to share about how parents handled, and I think this too, about fathers, you know, in the lives. And I know it's very difficult, because when you have a husband, most often is the one who leaves the house and leaves behind, and then they don't have a father in their life or a father in the home, and how important that is. And they're acknowledging that in the United States with certain cultures, you know, that don't have a father in the house, and the detriment, you know, of having a matriarch, you know. But this father, he had his son, it was just a video, but the boy, I want to say he was probably nine years old, 10 maybe. Anyway, he had been bullying and making fun of a little boy, I think it was a little boy, but a classmate who had losing their hair from cancer. And father found out about it and dragged his son literally into the barber with the men, and the men were around, and made the barber shave off his gorgeous little lock, because he obviously prided himself in his hair. It was very apparent. And that boy was, you know, definitely falling apart with it. Now, I'll tell you this, a mother couldn't have gotten away with that, more than likely, because I think they might not, but a dad, you're not going to not forgive your dad. I don't know. It doesn't say what happened after, but I thought, wow, there's a lesson to be learned there. You know, you don't see that very often. And here in our country, it's child abuse or something, you know, or the child would go to the authorities or something. But that's the way it was done back in our day, you know. When you know, the 50s, the 60s, you know, 70s, that would have the way that they were they would learn, you're not going to act like that because here's the detriment about it, you know?
Yeah.
But I think having empathy and understanding way is really the way to handle it, you know, like
Yes.
what you shared early on with how, you know, think about where's that, or what you were saying, Adina, what's
Yeah.
behind this, and where's that
Mm.
pain coming from, and where is that all? And sometimes it's just even in the mob, because if you try to talk to that person with all their friends around, they're going to be one way. When they're by
Yes.
themselves, they're going to be a
Mhm.
totally different person. And then
Yeah.
treating them with a kindness and an understanding or whatever. Not all, some are just because they have been, you know, beaten
Mm.
down by different things and you know, not
Mm.
treated kindly, and then in turn they do the same thing, which is another,
Yes.
you know. But
Yeah.
anyway,
And
mhm.
Mm. And then social media comes in, where you can
Yes,
anonymously say anything
yes,
you want.
yes.
And not even anonymously. I think sometimes you just don't think when you're on social media, or, like when you see a person face to face and you look them in the eye, I don't
Exactly.
think you would say the things to them that you would
Mhm.
when you
Oh, for
say it
sure.
in a message or something like that. And and that's really something that I've seen sometimes, when the children were still in school, and we had these WhatsApp groups with the teachers, and some of the parents, what they would say in those groups, it was just horrifying to me. I would like, would you really stand in front of the teacher and say that?
Mm.
You know?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that makes bullying a little easier for the children as well,
For
because they're all on
sure.
social media. They all,
Yeah. And it's
it's
not just children, the adults are
no,
doing it, you know? I
everyone.
mean, it's not, definitely not. It's just a
Yeah.
scary thing, but it is, there's this, oh, it's like wearing a mask, isn't it? In a way, it's like
Yes.
masking you
Yeah.
in it, you know, and that's why robbers, you know, they didn't want to be identified, but there's something about just hiding behind that mask and, you know, being able to do things. It's just not a good thing, but definitely the world is getting much darker. We knew that. We know how the
Yes.
story ends. We know, and we always think at every stage, I always think, whenever I'm thinking, oh, this has to be the end times. I mean, how much worse can it get? You know, things can turn, obviously, but then I always think back on the years where there was world wars, and what did they think back? You know, when there was Hitler and all of that. You know, certainly they must have thought, my gosh, this has to be. How can
Yeah.
it be any worse than this? And yet it continues. But I love too where it says that, you know, when the evil prospers, and that evil person prospers, it's only that they may be destroyed forever. Do you know? Some just need to get to a certain level, because there is times where it just looks like the ones that are doing the right thing are not winning in a way, you know, or they're
Yes.
at a disadvantage, and this other person is just, I think it happens a lot in relationships where we're the ones who they've left and they've got the new spouse, and they seem to not be struggling financially and all these things and all these great things, but you know, God says, don't envy the wicked. And I always
Yes.
come back to, would I want all of that, or would I want my relationship that I have with him and the peace that I have? I wouldn't give it up for anything. Are you crazy? You know, there's nothing that can compare with it. But it would be hard for being a child in that and having to think, well, look at, they're the ones that are popular. They're the ones that seem to, everybody believes them, and it becomes very seductive. And why shouldn't I just be like that? Oh, there's another thing with the role play, playing video games, a benefit with it, which is about parenting and not looking at your children in a good way and always calling them bad and evil. Do you know that sort of thing? Maybe we could talk about that in a future one coming up, because
Yes.
in role playing it, you know, I was a child in this video game. I know it just seems crazy, a 70-year-old woman playing video games. everybody, all my grandchildren. I don't know how many I play with. I think I play with all but the babies. I don't know. I've played with almost all of them, and all of them are at different levels, and it just does my head in. I'm telling you. I mean, it's just not, we're not adapt for this. And I'm saying, oh God, help, but in doing it, I was able to do this role play thing, and I'm the child in it, do you know?
Yes.
And they think that's funny, do you know? Like, oh my gosh, and they don't call me Mimi. I have a name and stuff. But in doing that and playing the role play, I started to see from a different perspective, because I wasn't that. Well, I was, before I got, met the Lord when I was young, but I can't remember back at that time. I know I was bad. I was really bad, I was really bad. So there was a night and day conversion there, even though I wasn't drinking, smoking, gambling, I wasn't those kinds of things, but I was just definitely a different person. But I can't remember what it was like in that. But when, and I also had amazing parents that always looked at me in the best way. And like even when I moved to a new school and there was a lot of things going on. And so I got a bad grade for the first time ever. And it was in the 8th grade. And I was so afraid, and I was even crying walking up and my mother said, what does it matter? I know you're brilliant. I know you, it doesn't really matter if you got that. Do you think that I would be upset with you? Why? And I don't know why I even thought that. I think it's because even the kids would say, oh, I'm going to have to pay for this. My parents are going to, whatever it is. So I kind of talk on that. But looking at your children in a way, and I would always say, and I'd say it to some of my misbehaving grandchildren, I say, but the nice, and I know they are, and I know it from their parents. And I said, the good thing is that you're always sweet, you're always kind, and you're always respectful. And they just come back, I love you, Mimi. And they just change. Do you know? Because that's the way I see them and that they want to be. But when I was role playing, and I had the one, obviously she had penned up, is it penned up or pinned up anger or issues, or pinned up? What is it? Is it pen, P-E-N, like you penning? I think it's penning like a animals in a pen. I think that's what it is. I'll have to look it up anyway. But she had this stuff, but she was kind of like the mean mom, and she kept on accusing me of all these things. And it wasn't me. It was one of my granddaughters who was supposed to be my sister. I know, it's all kind of crazy, but she was the one doing it, because I'm not even that good that I could do it. Do you know what I mean? I didn't have the capabilities. I don't have the, I'm still being coached by some children how to play. No, just do it like this, it just comes naturally. And I'm just like, ah. But anyway, but so because of that, all of a sudden I decided, oh, forget it. I'll just be the bad child in it, and it kind of felt good. I thought, and then I thought, wow, that must be the way children who are always accused of things and looked at in a bad way, they want to just give up. Or, do you know, I think we could take it into marriage, and I've seen it enough with evaluations when people come at questionnaires and they say that they were accusing their spouse of cheating, and they're constantly saying it, but they weren't. But then they think, why I might as well. I'm being accused to do it. I think we have to be really mindful of that, when accusatory and that sort of thing. Gotten complicated, hasn't it? But I think that it is something, how we look at our children, and it comes from the verse where it says, where the angel appears to Gideon. Do you remember what he says to him when he appears to Gideon? He's okay. So first of all, he was hiding. He was hiding, to not go. And I think he said something like, strong and mighty, or, warrior, talking about him. And he was anything but. You see? So I thought, so then knowing that, I started to speak those kinds of things into my children and my grandchildren's life. This is who you are. And I remember disciplining even before I really knew that too much, but disciplining my younger children, I say, but you're such a good girl. You would never do that. This just isn't like you. And they say, no, mommy, it's not. No, it's not. You wouldn't act like that. My girl doesn't do those kinds of things. No, 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 no. So we just don't do those. But I'm just not going to say you're bad. You hear that?
Yes.
And I know none of you would do that, and maybe none of our listeners, but we've seen that. How does that go? And how are we in that way? And how can we get them to see that, to see how we see them, how God sees them, and how they need to see themselves? I wouldn't do that. And have those convictions, should live by the convictions. Anyway, we've gone on a lot of different topics. I don't know where we are, but it's not, I'm just a guest here, so I don't need to figure it out. I'll leave it to you.
Yes, you don't need to figure it out. And it just shows us that in everything that we do, how important our words are, right? That death and life lies in our tongues, the words that we speak over others, the words that we speak over ourselves, and the things that we say in our daily lives to others. I think it just shows our love and compassion that He has given us to others if we do what you said, Erin, if we don't first go to the negative, because that is how we're built, isn't it?
It is human. It is our human nature.
Yes.
But when we love our children and parent our children the way He does, and using Him, to do it through, and we're an extension of Him, then we're not going to go wrong when we're constantly acknowledging Him in everything. It says acknowledge Him, which means just like He's there, and you just say, wait, what am I supposed to do? And it doesn't mean a lot of prayer or fasting. It'll come right to you when you're constantly acknowledging He's there and He can help you with it. I think is huge.
Yes, definitely. We can never do anything without Him for a second. So that's it. Thank you, ladies. Thank you so much for the podcast. Adina, do you have any final words before we say goodbye?
No, I was just listening to everything you shared, and about, the power of our words. And that's so true. And, for me as well with my children, I have to really rely on Him and ask Him, to give me the wisdom in terms of what I say to my children, and how to instill in them that they are uniquely and wonderfully created, and not to compare themselves with anyone else. And or for me to compare them to anyone else, because that's also something I've seen a lot, is parents comparing.
That's another topic, right?
Yes. But just to embrace who they are, and that their Heavenly Father made them uniquely and wonderfully.
Doesn't matter what anyone say about their toes. They are uniquely and wonderfully made. Yes. Ladies, so I think we're going to end off with that. Thank you so much for listening. We'll let you know when our next podcast is, and we'll see you again. I'm not going to say what the subject is, because you never know what the topic is.
God knows. We have no idea. We covered many in this one.
So ladies, have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you soon on our next podcast. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.